And so, my dear ones, we have to get back now in time. And we have to get back into space and back into the realization also of our human selves. And our challenge always is to bring the balance to the humanness of ourselves by recognizing the divine aspect of ourselves. And that's always our balance, and it's easy to forget that. And when we forget it, we get into trouble. So the main thing here is to know that truly our reality is a spiritual reality. Our reality belongs to an invisible side of life. It belongs to an energy side of life. It belongs to an invisible source and presence side of life in the sense of the physical senses. I cannot perceive my source physically in the way that I can perceive a parent or an employer or a spiritual director or anybody who assists me to realize my good. I can, however, perceive the source of my being with my inner eye. And my inner eye is my intuitive intelligence. My inner eye is my inner perception. It is my inner intuition. That's how I perceive. I perceive with my innerness, the realm of my divinity. And when I do, then I am able to perceive it in everything else too. It doesn't work the other way around. It doesn't work me perceiving God in everything outside of myself, and then hopefully I'll see God within myself. It doesn't work that way. It works the other way around. I perceive it first within myself, and I cannot then but perceive it in every person, place, and thing. And it's very difficult. So how do we go about that? Yet again, we ask the question, which is the question we're asking every time we come together like this. How do I do it? 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 Tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. 90% of the world's population want to be told what to do. Most of the time. 100% of the population thinks that they want to do everything themselves and nobody should tell them anything. Most of the time. But history proves otherwise, and our humanity proves otherwise. And that's the humanity of us that wants to be told what to do, even though we may be as controlling as all get up. Deep within us, there's, I want to be told what to do so I can be sure that I'm doing the right thing. And it doesn't work like that. And that's why if you read the Brothers Karamazov, there's a scene in there with Jesus and the Grand Inquisitor. And the Grand Inquisitor is having a chat with Jesus. And he says, you know, man, I like you. Not in those language, I'm modernizing it. Saying, hey, dude, I like you. I really do. Nothing against you personally, honestly. No, you're... In fact, I really enjoy having these, encounters with you. And I get it. I get where you're going with, the people and the freedom and all of that. And everybody's a sovereign being, and I get that. I dig it. I know it. Yeah, I have that. But here's the thing. Those guys out there are not ready for you yet. They really aren't. I can guarantee you if I gave them their freedom, total freedom, 6 months they'd be crawling back to me saying, tell us what to do. Tell us what to do. Tell us what to do. Because mostly they would have gone to hell in a handbasket with all that freedom, without the ability to handle it. So I'm very sorry, but you have to go. Yeah, I have to let you go. I have to get rid of you. They're just not ready. And, you're upsetting things. That's symbolic of what happens with us. We think we want one thing, we get it, and we're not able to handle it. You can't sit a baby down to a steak and potatoes. It's not ready for it. You give according to the need. 9 children sitting around a table, you're not going to feed them all in the same way. You know, the 17-year-old teenager who's a jock, he's going to need more, you know, than the 4-year-old. And different, maybe. So we have to put ourselves in the way of being able to be guided wisely and well from the inside and the outside. And the way we start that inner direction is to really commit to having a relationship with our source. And you say, well, what does that look like? I mean, I know what a relationship looks like with my spouse or with my parent or with my child or, you know, with the doctor, the dentist, and so on. But, you know, what does that look like, my relationship with Spirit? And it's based on one major thing. And it's a very hard thing for us all. Extremely hard. And you can't go and buy any of it anywhere, or you can't go to a doctor, an expert, or whatever to know how to do this better. And the major fundamental component to growing a deep relationship with our source is the capacity and the ability to listen. It's all about listening. It's all about listening. Now, we in the West don't do well with listening. And we're getting worse as the technological age moves in and absorbs us. It's epidemic now. People's inability to pay attention and to listen and to be present and to be alert, to be awake and to be aware. There was a time you could go out and sit around a table in a restaurant and people may be bored, but at least they listened, they had to, or pretended they listened. Not anymore. Excuse me, I just had to pop outside, take this call. Or, excuse me, I just have to see what this is. And sometimes they don't even say, excuse me. Pay attention to listening wherever you are, whether you're on your own. What are you listening to? Your own thoughts, that could be dangerous if you're not paying attention to what's going on in there. What kind of music are you listening to? What kind of radio are you listening to? What kind of TV are you listening to? When you're out and about and mixing and mingling, what are you listening to? Gossip? Mostly negative conversations about the awfulness of life and living? And who's terrible? Who's the number one terrible person on the list this time? Is that what we're listening to? What are we listening to? And how do we listen? How am I listening? Could I call myself a good listener? Because a good listener is not good enough anymore not to create for yourself a deep spiritual relationship with your source. You have to be a radical, intense listener. And that's why it is written, be still, be quiet, and know God. If you want to know God, that is. Be still, be quiet. In quietness and stillness shall your confidence be, it is written. You think this is just a lark? It's just pretty words, nice poetry, spiritual stuff. These are spiritual directions. These are the codes that help us break through into the realization that we are more than just this. That we are more than just this. That there's another side to us, there's a greatness to us, there's a genius to us, there's a divinity to us. And that's not to make us have swollen egos. That should be received with a humility that's unbelievable, awesome, and wondrous. But we like to live in the world of illusion, the world of stories and myths and scandal and gossip and all that is not good, whole, and wholesome. You just have to look at our viewing habits and the programs we're fed from the TV buffs. They wouldn't be feeding us that if we weren't watching them, if we didn't want them. If we were not tuning in, they would not be providing us with those kinds of things. So it's not their fault. I remember a story once that Caroline Myss told about her young niece. And the first time that her brother was called into school because the niece was in trouble. I don't remember what the niece did or whatever. So he was called in and he went in. And so he said to his daughter, okay, what have you got to say for yourself? And she named a string of girls and she said they were really, really the main ones that were the cause of all of this. And his response to that was, this is the one and only time that you will get to blame somebody else when I ask this kind of question. And from here on in, you will respond to this kind of question when I ask it with, I. And you will share with me your responsibility in it, without the mention of anybody else. And I thought that was brilliant. Brilliant. If more parents would do that with children at a young age, then they would be aiding and abetting those children to become self-directive and self-responsible at an early stage in their lives. You're in control of your kingdom, of your domain, of your life, and all goes on in it. You don't have to watch these things, listen into these things, participate in these things. You can take it to another level, if not for all, but within yourself. We can turn the knob, or no, we don't even have to turn a knob off, do we? Just go click. At least we used to use a calorie getting up to walk to the television to, and walk back and plonk back down on the TV chair, which, by the way, the TV chair is the most expensive chair you will ever sit in. It'll cost you so much. Now you just go, you got two, you got three. You don't only have a television, but you have a this, and you have a that, and you have another thing, and a 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 thing. And now, to use the things, you get a thing the size that you read, or download, and do on television. On the internet. There was a time, I'm aging myself here, but then I was 2, when you'd open the hood or the bonnet of a car, and you could see spark plugs, and you could change spark plugs. I used to be able to do that as an 8-year-old with my dad. Now you open up the thing, and it's all encased in something. And you see very little of anything. And you go, I don't know what's wrong. Electrical, digital. And it's great, and I love the digital age, and I hope you do too. But with it comes the responsibility of being able to use all of these things wisely and well. Great talk now. Oh my gosh, God help you all out there who are parents with young children. God help you. There are so many things you have to steer those children through and around. And you can get apps for all kinds of things. You can even get an app now that will tune into your teenagers driving. You'll know the speed they're doing and so on. And you can program it so that the car comes home at a certain time and blah, 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 and won't go certain places. It's a lot of having to take into account in the nurturing of a young soul. Whew, it's big. It's big. I have the greatest of respect and admiration for parents. Must be a terrifying thing at times. Because there's no preparation. You can become a parent at 16, at 15, whatever, and it's trial and error. You have children taking care of children. But then, that's another thing. Back to listening. Listening. The piece here on listening. And it's from the class notes of one of our classes for the Foundations course in Science of Mind. It says, listening is a spiritual practice that is sometimes overlooked in all of our days in so many ways of doing and creating and conversing with each other. We don't pay too much attention to the importance of listening. Although I can remember as a small child, I'm sure you can too, my mother saying, "Are you listening, child?" Yes, Mom. Do you hear me? Yes, Mom. Then heed me, child. That's the part we didn't get. Didn't know what heed was anyway. And it's the same with each other. We don't heed each other. We far less listen to each other. Forget heeding each other. I mean, here we are going, yeah, that's terrible. Sorry about that. You know, maybe something good will show up for you soon. Oh, sorry, I have to go now. Here's blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm not exaggerating. I wish I was. I wish I was exaggerating. I am not exaggerating. And when you're introduced to people and so on, they're shaking your hand, they're going, "Oh, nice to meet you." And they're scouring the room to see if there's somebody out there that they really want to meet. Be present. Be present. If you want to know the presence of God, if you want to be in the presence of God, if you want to experience the grace of God, be present, be present, be present. Why? Because God is omnipresent. God is present to you and everybody else too and everything else too. Omnipresence, omnipresence, omnipresence. So while you're out there in the world and I'm out there in the world, everything I'm meeting has an element and an aspect of God within it. That at least is worth listening to, paying attention to, and attending to. People who get on your last nerve especially are going to be your challenge. Well, that's the case. Extrapolate yourself and stand back from the humanity of that person and then see that person in a golden glow of as their sainted selves, all iridescent and sparkly and shiny and glowing like a saint, because that's the truth of their being. When you feel like nothing much yourself, have the same image. See yourself all sparkly and iridescent and glowing, because that's the truth of your sacred beingness. Try it out. It works. We need all the little bits of help we can get. And the humanity of us loves that. Loves to play little games and imagings and things like that. As a small child, I used to love to do those. I mean, really think about it. The amount of money we pay on games and things and so on for children these days. We would get a little book of dress-up dolls. And for hours and hours and hours, we would love to dress up those dolls, you know, dressing them all up. Well, sometimes you have to dress yourself up in your truth when you're not feeling that way or so inclined. Remember the dress-up dolls. At least the ladies can. And the men will have to skip that step and just go to doing it. And dress yourself as Spirit has dressed you. Perceive yourself as Spirit always perceives you in your truth, in your radiance, in your absolute centered core of your being. That's how Spirit sees us all. So play that game. I spy with my little eye something beginning with D, divinity. And start seeing yourself and dressing yourself up as Spirit sees you and has dressed you. So with all those awkward Annies and, terrible Tonys and so on that you encounter, because it's nothing to do with you, it's just their awfulness and terribleness and so on. I wouldn't attract something like that into my life, I don't think. Just see them in another light. Energize them in another energy and move on. And don't be perturbed. And don't take it personally. That's our downfall. We personalize everything. You hurt me. You failed me. You let me down. You are the cause of. It's your fault. See, if you want to grow up spiritually, you have to let go of all of that. It's terrible. No one to blame. And you'll go into withdrawals. You really will. It'll be hard. You'll be in withdrawals. It's not easy. Because you're going, and you want to say it. And you want to do that. And you can, but then you'll be allowing your ego to rule the roost. And you will be denying the truth of your being, which is your spirit that stands back from that in a poised, centered way and goes, God bless you into your highest and your best good. That's what I want for you. And that can happen only when we listen enough to the truth in here that sets us free. The spiritual practice of listening is critical. However, in order to deepen the inner life and grow in a conscious awareness of truth, we must first want to desire it, to be a listener. Listening takes on a new meaning from that used in our usual daily life, because here we mean not just listening to the general noise of the world around us, but rather listening to the heart of the world, the heart of ourselves. Listening to the heart of it all. To listen in this way means to listen with one's whole heart and whole being, in order to be completely present to what is occurring in this moment now. By being with ourselves and others, the gift of listening gives us the wisdom of knowing our own mind and allows us to develop generosity, patience, peace, poise, and a loving presence with others. Oh my goodness, what a blessing listening is. How beautiful is that? So it's listening in yourself to everything around you from yourself. And all of you is present. Hard, extremely hard, but hard. Doesn't mean it's not doable. But once you start doing it, you get into the habit of it, until eventually it becomes habitual. And there's no effort anymore, and there's no struggle anymore, and you don't have to anymore. You get to. You go from having to, oh, I get to. See, I have to get in my spiritual practice now, to, oh, now I get to do my spiritual practice. It's a whole different energy around it. When we attune the inner ear to truly listen within our own being, what are we listening for? In the purest sense, we are listening to our own guidance, our own wisdom, what we may call the still small voice that speaks and gives us direction. Listening within is listening with our whole being. Taking a question within, we may feel a sensation in the body, an intuition, an urge within the heart, a certainty within the stomach. And deeper, we may find ideas, words, peace, and a certainty of what to do next. Like all spiritual practice, the ability to listening deeply develops over time as we make it a daily commitment and practice for ourselves in our decision making. You know, we ask the rhetorical question, how much time do you spend on the idea of listening? Am I a good listener? Do I listen well? Is this an opportunity now for me to truly listen? I mean, really, how much time and investment have we given to the gift, the talent of listening? Maybe we could make up our minds today to endeavor to pay attention to listening to ourselves and listening to others in a whole different way, without agenda, staying right here, right now with the words that are being shared and not waiting for them to shut up so that you can put in your 2 cents worth. It's a challenge for us all. It has been said that the deepest need of most people is simply to be heard. Everybody has that need, to be heard. To hear somebody, you have to be present to somebody. You have to gift them with your attention. And so that's one of our deepest needs, to be heard, to be seen and to be heard. And when we were raised with children shall not be seen nor heard. And that was the adage of the time when I was growing up 200 years ago in Ireland. Children are seen and not heard. Well, it didn't happen much like that in my family because there didn't seem to be that kind of need. Because manners in those days had to do with, you know, when adults were around, children didn't listen into conversations, and so it was just a given. You just didn't do that. And when adults were visiting and so on, they were visiting the grown-ups, and if children were there, children just usually sat quietly or played quietly or whatever, or went away and played somewhere else. They didn't engage in adult conversation other than to say hello or, you know, answer the questions from your auntie or something like that, and then that was it. They didn't butt in all the time. But then that had to do with other things, different kinds of lifestyles, and manners were very big in those days. With regard to adults and children, there was etiquette. There was a way of being. All the neighbors called each other Mr. and Mrs. They were not on first name terms. It's hard to believe that now, but that's the way it was. One of my mother's closest friends, she was Mrs. Fox and she was Mrs. Stanley, and they were very close friends. And to give the pure gift of listening, it is important to give up the need to comment, have an opinion, fix or argue about anything that is being said. Remember that all people are divine and are entitled to their own individual perspective. Each person lives a life with unique experiences and perceptions. By being willing to simply listen to another, you find that each is able to find their own way and sort out their own feelings in their own time. And you and I get upset when people don't listen to our advice. Well, she's had the advice of this, that, and the other, and so on and so forth, and still she just goes her own way. Of course she does, because that's what we do anyway. We're going to take our own advice in the end. So do anything you do without attachment to outcome, in other words. Listen with your heart in this manner. It is empowering for the other as you hold within your own being the idea that each person is powerful and has the power to know their own way. And therefore, when we're talking to each other and having this encounter with each other, all the time we're thinking, I trust the intuitive intelligence within you to guide you in the best possible way. And especially parents with their children, there comes a moment when they have to trust the intelligence within that child to lead them along the right path, as well as with their own wisdom and their own guidance. And at the end of the day, each one is in each one's own experience and is responsible for that experience and only for that experience and nobody else's. Simply listen with your heart and be there for them and see what happens. Hear the voice of their truth. In this way, you will learn and experience another aspect of God, which is truly what it's all about. At the center of being, we are all one. Practice listening with the heart, and you will discover a new oneness with everyone around you. Embrace the spiritual practice of listening and find the many ways it can truly bless your life. So I guess that's what Spirit wants us to be pondering and contemplating today. How well we do with regard to listening to ourselves, number one. Because if I don't learn to listen to me, I'll not know how to listen to you. So how do you listen within? And to come back full circle, to be still and to know God is to listen and to become expert in listening. And to listen, you have to be quiet. You have to go, shh, what's that? Shh, what's that? You have to become quiet. And I know we can all do this because I certainly know that everybody in this room can do this, because if we couldn't, we wouldn't be here listening to what Spirit has in store for us today. So if you're listening to it, you can do it. And the thing is to trust that wonderful power and presence within us to nudge us when we're not listening, so that we can wake up enough to be able to receive whatever it is we're supposed to hear. And whatever we hear in that way is always a gift. It's always a gift. So take your listening selves out there into life and living. Take yourselves out as the brightness of life and living, as the blessing of life and living, as the joy of life and living, especially in this holy season that we are entering into now, and be the best present that you can be, which is your listening self. There's no greater gift than that. So as we go about the business of buying gifts and wrapping gifts and doing all of that stuff, let's be the gift itself. As we put that into the gift we are actually wrapping and giving. And give our gifts in presence and with meaning and with true recognition of the other as we do present them with a gift. Because everybody wants to be seen and to be heard. And so it is.